Hi, guys and girls. Welcome back to the Redesigning Society podcast, and I'm your host, Phillip J. Watts. Today's guest is Max Igan. Many of you will be familiar with Max's work. He is a strong contributor to the network of truth and freedom that really has amplified over the last decade or so to bring a bit more honor and justice to what's going on in our world, and to really help people to step into their authenticity and connect with who they really are and what they could potentially make of themselves. Max runs the website called The Crow House. He has been a presenter, an author, and an outspoken person about what's going on in the control system we call the system of the 21st century for humanity. And he has also made a couple of films, several films, should I say, one of which is Transformation. I think another one is The Awakening. I've had Max on the podcast before twice. The last time I think we sat down was back in April of 2017, and that was just after one of the largest supermoons, or during one of the largest supermoons since back in the 1930s. So that was an amazing discussion. Max has got a project that he created called the Full Circle Project to help connect people from all around the world to get local action happening in their communities. And for those who are interested, you can check out the Full Circle Project and all his other projects through the Crow House website, which is thecrowhouse.com. Max, welcome back to the Redesigning Society podcast.
Nice to be here, Phil. Thanks for asking me on, brother.
Mate, it's always a pleasure to chat with you. You really are at the forefront or the cutting edge of this sort of investigation and the unveiling, the post-apocalyptic world, as some people call it. You've been able to bring so much truth and even love. That's one of my most fondest loves about you, Max, is that you bring some pretty dire, some pretty dark information to so many people who are trying to uncover themselves and to continue the expansion of their consciousness. But you do it in a way that helps ground us in that essential loveness that, sort of characterizes being human in a way. So it's such a pleasure to talk to you again, and I really do thank you so much for all the work that you do.
Well, thank you, brother. Look, it's important to keep it focused in that love spirit, I think, and like you've got to bring the dark information to people, because if people don't know what the problem is, they can't heal it. But you've got to attempt to empower them in that information. Too many people just delve into fear porn and bring people all this uncomfortable stuff, and they never even suggest or attempt any solutions. And I think that there's, opportunity in all crisis. And, we're in clear and present danger from a lot of different areas, a lot of different directions. But all of these crises, present opportunity for us. So that's the approach that I try to take with the shows. And it seems to be working with people. I get a lot of good emails from people that say they feel very empowered from listening to it. They're getting the right information, but they're getting it in the right way. And I think that's important.
Well, there's no point facing the shadow self without transmuting it into some sort of positive or productive energy, right?
Well, yeah, and it's really all the shadow self, isn't it? Everything we're facing is a result of the shadow self. It's a result of us failing to face it, really. As Carl Jung said, all oncoming evil comes from us. We are the source of all oncoming evil. We are the source of all previous evil as well. It comes from us, and it's our failure to face that and to realize that, we create this mess ourselves, and the shadow does exist in the world due to our willingness to ignore it. And we need to stop that, because, there's so much talk of, if you look at the dark, you're just amplifying it, what do they say, love and light, and, don't look at the negative. And that will make the negative. If you're giving energy to the negative, that creates a negative. Where attention goes, energy flows. But really, if you're not paying attention to the negative, you're allowing it to persist by your willing ignorance of it and your willingness to look away. All of these problems exist because of our failure to do that. So, it's time that we did face up to this and face up to this shadow that does exist in the world, and realize that it exists in us. And it isn't ignoring that makes it go away. It's facing it that heals it. And we have to do that.
Yes, well, the New Age movement has been co-opted for a long time and twisted into some passive, inactive philosophy on life. May have actually been a template for a one world religion at some stage, but excuse me, I think that's they've thrown that out the window. But people are still lost in this: be positive, don't judge, and just focus on the self and to heal the world. But it really is a balancing act, isn't it? You've got to look at what's going on internally and step into, as you say, step into your power or step into your authenticity to really radiate and emit those electromagnetic vibrations into the greater grid that's going to be a facilitator to that expansion of collective or individual consciousness. As well as do something, get actually active and do something locally and be a part of the process of this physical realm.
Well, yeah, like the New Age movement was completely constructed, and it was constructed for a reason. A lot of people were becoming dissatisfied with religion and disassociated with religion and malcontented with religion, and so they needed something to channel them into, something that was going to give them religion-like aspects and something that was going to give them these spiritual understandings, but something that would eventually, funnel them into a little blind alley of inaction and tell them to sit there and meditate and the world's going to change. It doesn't work that way. And there's a lot of gems of gold in the New Age movement. There's a lot of really good stuff in there, but there's a lot of really bad stuff in there as well that has all been designed to lead people into this state of what is essentially spiritual narcissism and into a blind alley of inaction. And that's what it's done. But it was very necessary for them to do that, just to kind of mop up all those people that were waking up and rubbing the sleep from their eyes and were becoming discontented with every other thing that was offered to them. And even when you look at things way back, look at Helena Blavatsky and the exposing of the hierarchy and all that sort of stuff. This is what's happening now, the exposing of the hierarchy. This is what 9/11 was really all about, the exposing of the hierarchy. 9/11 was a really clever trick because with 9/11, not only did they spark the war of terror, but they also sparked the rise of the truth movement. And they gave themselves the ability to identify all the activists and identify all the free thinkers and give these people this concept that it was all neutral and they were hidden behind their computer screens and no one knew who they were and all this sort of stuff. But they've been tracking everything right from the beginning. But you could never get these people, these free thinkers, to expose themselves without putting something like 9/11 directly in their face and then promoting it as this big thing. Like we had people like Alex Jones come out and push it on everybody, make sure he wakes up as many people as he can, but wakes them up with a revolutionary mindset. And it isn't even really about that. It's just about identifying who all the people who haven't bought into the government propaganda are, where all the awake people are. It's all been a very, very clever trick. So, we've got to look how we're being played with all this. And it's our, when we look at the shadow, we look at all this stuff in the world and we face it, but we face it in the wrong way. We get angry with it. We want to fight it. We don't realize what the system is. It's all a fiction anyway. We don't have to fight it. We can simply disconnect from it. What the system wants us to do is get angry about all this stuff and fight back. We don't have to. We're the ones who hold the whole thing up. All we have to do is pull our support from it.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that if we don't start facing this sort of aspect of ourselves and our society, that nothing's going to change, or implied that nothing's going to change. And it is so true. Like I've gone through an incredible transformation and expansion process within myself because I had to. I was in a sad state of affairs, literally, for many, many years. And I really needed to change myself to increase, to find some sort of level of contentment and peace in my life, and also to really advance myself, rewire myself to be more empowered and be more free-spirited and really be more free. But I look around and a lot of people struggle to really do this, Max. We are permeated by sickness, by sadness, by stress in our world. Addiction is rampant and people don't seem to care that they're not really connected with their contentment and they're not really that happy on top of that as well. So why do you think that it's so challenging for people in general, there are a lot of amazing, beautiful souls who are doing so much through whatever sort of activism or whatever niche they love, like, for example, permaculture. It's really widespread and growing. But why do you think in general people find it hard to want to undertake that challenging process? It is not a short-term process to heal and grow yourself. It's a never-ending journey, obviously, but it takes a while to really transform yourself over several years. So do you think that's what it is, or why do you think people are struggling to undertake those changes within themselves, which in effect would have a beautiful effect around them in their world?
They don't want to step out of their comfort zones. There's a lot of people that are, in a state of denial and cognitive dissonance in regard to lots of, events that are going on in regard to their government and all that sort of stuff. And even people that are aware of what's going on, many people are unwilling to step out of their comfort zones. This is what the nanny state does. You get a comfy house and it's warm in the winter, and, you've got everything you need there. And life isn't that good. It's not bad, but it's not good. If you work hard, you can just get by, and everything's kind of good at the moment. The government's corrupt. All this bad stuff's happening, but, you can pay the bills. You can put some food on the table. Everything's just okay, so you sort of stay there in that position. And it's the nanny state that's done it. We're given this, this whole social system. We kind of go through school. We get trained to be a big, little cog in the big machine. We get there, and then we got to find a rental, or we got to save up and build a house, or get someone to build it for us, or whatever. But we don't ever go and build our houses ourselves. We don't ever have to look after ourselves in our life. There's nothing that a modern person has to do to actually look after themselves. There's no life skills they need to attain. So once you remove all of those life skills from people, which we've done over a matter of 5 or 6 generations, they've removed pretty well all the life skills from people. Like my old mother who died 10 years ago, 20 years ago, even at 70 or 80 years old, you could put her out in the bush and she'd be able to knock herself up a shelter and dig a garden and grow herself some food and collect some water from the well and whatever. You couldn't get any modern person and put them in the forest. They wouldn't last a week. So it's it's the problem of becoming homeless and of being, on the outside of society. And if they step out of line, something might happen. They might lose their job, and they're just above the poverty line now. They can just keep that roof over their head, and the fact that the roof has been supplied for them. They're paying rent for it. All they got to do is go and collect the paper, and everything's good. So that's the situation that we've got. And as far as the governments and things go, we just pay them taxes. We pay them all this stuff, and it's just protection money. Go and have that war over in Syria. That's all good. Just keep it out of my backyard. Here's your taxes. It's all good. It's racketeering. The governments are racketeering. We're paying them protection money, and we're paying to stay in our comfort zones. And we've got to work just hard enough to maintain those comfort zones. And people don't really look at it. They don't see how much they are maintaining just to keep a roof over their head, how much they got to work, how much they got to struggle just to keep a roof over their head and just to put that meager little bit of food on the table. They don't realize how much they've got to work for, or sometimes they do, but they don't want to think about it because they don't want to see what the option is. If they stop working, if they just give up and say, look, I've had it, throw their hands in the air and walk away, what are they going to do? They'll be out in the cold, become one of those homeless people that you read about in the newspapers. Oh, we don't want the homeless people around, riffraff. So it's the programming, brother. And it's easy to see. People just can't step out of their comfort zones, even if it means saving their lives, It's an interesting thing. With this smart grid coming online, you could look at this and say, well, this whole system is going to become fully autonomic and it's going to take over our lives completely within the next 5 or 10 years. And when that happens, you're going to get locked out of the internet and you're not going to have the internet and you're going to be left out in the cold to fend for yourself. And you could stop that from happening by giving up your smartphone today. And people would still take that 5 or 10 years of having their smartphone rather than give it up. They'd still take that and think that they're going to be safe, even if you told them, and in 5 years it's all going to be turned off and you're going to be left to fend for yourself anyway, so you better learn how to do it now. And they would say, oh, no, I don't believe you, and they'll keep their smartphone and they'll think, well, that's really bad that that's going to happen. I hope everybody else turns off their smartphone so we don't have to fend for themselves, but I'll just keep mine because it won't make a difference if I just keep mine, And everybody thinks that way. And that's the way it is, It's a sad and sorry situation, brother.
Yes, it's one thing that I have heard you mention before, and it's a question that I've been asking myself, actually. I've really been analysing how I use my smartphone because I do have one, It's an older version that I just bought online. Just got a cracked screen, and it's not something that I really spend a huge amount of time on. I very rarely go through the social media using it. I use it a lot for just checking the weather. As an organic farmer, I find myself always checking radars and etc., especially when there's been a lack of rain. But other than that, okay, it's great for Google Maps getting around. There's a couple of good features, and sometimes I like to have a bit of downtime, playing a bit of silly poker. That's pretty much what my use of the smartphone is. And I have been thinking, well, what's the point? Why am I even using this? And especially when I have to worry about, silly word, but when I have to concern myself around battery life all the time, it seems an absolutely ridiculous amount of time, let alone all those other layers that you mentioned just then. So I actually did decide yesterday I'm just going to get a shitty old phone that the battery lasts for a few days, so I can answer my phone calls, and then I'll just manage my other aspects around that. But moving back to, and I do want to get into smart grids. I heard part of your interview with InPower that you released yesterday, and I've also been following your work around 5G and the Internet of Things and automated intelligence, and you've really put forward some brilliant information for us to really consider for this, for understanding how this technocratic rollout, this globalized, centralized control grid is really amping up in that technological space. But before we get into there, just taking a step back, why I really appreciate your work, Max, and I think so many others do too, is that, and this comes back to that framing the dark or the darkness in that light or in that love. But your balance between focusing on the systemic aspect of what's been happening in terms of what's literally happening in that material realm, how's the control grid and the third dimensional construct being rolled out on all those different types of levels, including more subtle and more explicit ones, but also the spiritual component. There is the magic of life. There is so much reverence to be had. There's so much creation to be had. We really, I just like to call it a magical mess. There's this divine dichotomy. It's so prominent, the way that the energy is so balanced between I shouldn't say balanced, because the darkness has really, I think, been skewed. There isn't a balance between the yin yang energy within the collective consciousness. It's very, very skewed at the moment. But the dance of dichotomies in this current era is unbelievable. And a lot of people do just focus on the systemic aspect. Who's physically, what actual people and what actual apparatuses are being rolled out and what's the actual situation within the system. But then they forget to really look at the most beautiful aspect of the experience, which is the magic and the exploration of consciousness, and experiencing this game in a way that really does amplify that healing and growth aspect that we all should be prioritizing in our lives. So your focus on that has no doubt brought that genuine energy to what's going on. So not just brought, but contributed that genuine energy to this awakening process. So I guess my question is, going back to the other question, so why are so many people in the Truth Network solely focusing on one side of that equation, but really not stepping into that philosophical or spiritual introspection and endeavor that makes all this process so worth it?
Well, it's like a roller coaster ride almost. People have these spiritual understandings, which is what leads them to find out and discover these physical problems, like the problems in the legal system and all this sort of stuff. And then they go down that little rabbit hole and start looking for ways out, and they kind of get lost on this roller coaster ride, and they step off the spiritual path. Usually, part of the way down the roller coaster, they'll go, hang on a minute, and they'll remember, and they'll step back onto that spiritual side. But then it's very easy to step back onto the roller coaster again. As soon as you find out something else, you get sort of lost down this path. But really the whole thing is a spiritual battle. I mean, everything that we do, this whole legal system is a spiritual battle. It's all fiction anyway. You know, all the success I've had in any legal situations in my life is simply because of knowing who and what I am, and knowing that what I'm speaking to and conversing with are other human beings, regardless of what they're wearing or what forms they're holding in their hands or whatever. You know, I'm speaking to people, and we're all equal under this system, under God, whatever you want to perceive that to be. And if you really want to look at their legal system, well, it's all based on ecclesiastic law anyway, which is all based on the law of God, apparently. And if they're going to base all their law on the Bible, well, okay, I can live with that. It says on the second page of the Bible that God created man and gave man dominion over the earth. That's us. So everything else is below that. So, you know, they can't ignore that bit. If they're going to base it on ecclesiastic law, they can't ignore that bit. You've got to use the whole book if you're going to use the book. So even just having that basic understanding that, you know, if there is a God, whatever there is up there that created man, we were the first on the list. And then after that, man created society. Society created government. Government created all these laws. They're way down the food chain. It's just that basic remembering. And if you can apply that to any legal situation or, you know, any of these physical situations that you're in, it's a big step upwards. It's a big step back from where you are, realizing that there is a spiritual understanding to all of this. That's what I mean with all the mechanisms that people offer you to get out of this mess as well. All the new systems that people come up with. It doesn't matter what anyone comes up with. If we haven't changed our heart space and haven't changed what's inside us, it's not going to matter. And if we do change what's inside us and we get that spiritual understanding and we start interacting with people in the correct way, then the whole world has to change around us. We don't have to change anything else. We don't have to change the system. We don't even have to change the legal system. It will change around us. You know, if we start doing good and start doing the right thing, start engaging in right behavior rather than wrong behavior, the world changes. It's as simple as that. You know, and that all comes down to a basic spiritual understanding, a basic understanding of what yourself and the equality of you with others, you know, what it means to be equal to others. It doesn't mean we're the same, but it means that we have equal value. You know, we don't have the right to inflict ourselves on others, and everyone has the right to enjoy their life in quiet enjoyment and pursue the happiness of whatever they want to do, you know. So, you know, it's just having that understanding, I think, Phil. And people don't have it. They get lost in these little roller coaster rides, and they get lost in the fever of battle as well. You know, like, you know, you see a problem and you want to go and fight it. You want to go and battle that. You know, you want to go to judge and you go to court and, you know, battle the legal system and get that judge, you know, for what he did or whatever. You know, you want to go and fight the congressman or fight this or fight the policeman. Really, that's just giving energy to it. All we have to do is realize that we're the ones that are holding it up, and we step into our spiritual selves and our spiritual reality, and we can just step away from the system because it's all fiction. The whole thing's a fiction. It's just a meme. It's just an idea that somebody had that the world should be this way, and we all decided to go along with it. You know, people wrote all these rules down on paper, and they sent their goon squad out to make sure we walk between the lines. But there's billions of us, and we don't have to do any of this stuff. We don't. It's a complete fiction. But again, you know, people look at it and they see it and they go, oh, but it's too insurmountable, you know. And again, they don't want to step out of their comfort zone. They think, oh, it's terrible, and I'm looking at all this stuff and it's all bad. And okay, I'm listening to all these people. If we just send $1 to Max every month and hold his coat, he'll save the world for us. And they'll get the newsletter that the world's changed. You know, people don't want to step out of their comfort zone. They don't want to actually have to do anything about it. And that's what I've been promoting for the whole time since, you know, the last 9 or 10 years that I've been on air is action and people, you know, getting this respect for themselves, you know, respect themselves enough to respect their neighbors and respect the people around them, realize we're all in this together. And, you know, we can get out of this if we can just, you know, gain that respect for each other and gain that unity of focus on this slavery system that we live in. It'd be very, very simple to change things, Phil. I really think it would, you know, and there's no system we need. Like I said, you know, we've got to change the inner system, change the inner workings. And this is where the New Age movement has co-opted that as well. You know, they'll tell you, if you change the inner world, you'll change the outer world. And people think, oh, I can just sit here if we all do a collective meditation, we're going to change the world. Well, no, you've got to change the inner world, change the way you perceive yourself, change your spiritual understandings, change the way you interact with others, and get these inner spiritual understandings that you've gained and apply them to the people around you and the world that you live in, and you will change the world. It's a ripple effect. But people have to get involved. It requires action. And that's, unfortunately, the last thing people seem to want to be involved in is action, you know.
I'm a strong advocate of the many truths theory, and a good example of that is uh, in response to that new age sort of co-option, is that a lot of people just believe that they're connected, and so that sort of is like the killing of the self, killing of the ego. And I would say that it is true on one layer we are connected, we are interdependent ecologically, quantum physically, metaphysically, but on another layer we're also separate. And I also sort of apply that to how we approach what's going on in the world. There are so many people in many different circumstances who can contribute to the action aspect in whatever discipline they're in, whatever career they're in, and what sort of circumstances they've got around them locally. But one of the major approaches that I think we all should be really focusing on is food. It is so critical that we learn to be self-reliant within the individual family, but also within the individual community, to look after your food and other aspects of your sort of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you can take care of those things yourself within your community context, then you're really gone a long way to undermining the control that this system does have over us. So is that something, are there any other sort of primary areas do you think we should focus on when it comes to looking after ourselves on that active level?
Look, all of those sorts of life skills are needed. Every life skill you can obtain, you should obtain. How to do things, how to do everything. Most people, I mean, like you say, food is incredibly important. Why haven't we got permaculture gardens everywhere? That would heal everything. All of these cities, all these parks we've got everywhere that are kind of decorative and don't do anything. They could all be edible, the whole lot. But of course, you can't do that because it messes up their economic model. But yeah, growing food is a really, really important thing we could do and should do. And people need to just gather whatever life skills they have. They really do. This has been something that's been really shocking to see in the last couple of generations, and quite dangerous, really. Humankind has led themselves into a position where they have no life skills anymore. And all of our food's been taken from us through seed patenting and Monsanto and all this sort of stuff, GM crops and all the stuff they've done. So it's very difficult to even grow food that you want to. Go and buy seeds and they won't produce their own seeds again. But people have lost all of these skills, Phil. Even if people got food that did grow their own seeds, many people wouldn't know how to collect the seeds and how to store them. We've lost all of these basic skills, which were really, really important skills that everybody knew. Everybody knew this stuff 100 years ago. And we've lost that. We've thought that technology has come along to save us. Technology has come along to steal all of our information from us and enslave us to the technology. And the more life skills it takes from us, the more we become dependent upon it, the more it enslaves us. And that's where it's going. What's wrong with the smartphones and all that sort of stuff as well is the fact that they're using them for to sign into places everywhere, like on trains and all this sort of stuff. So people don't even know how to write their name anymore. We're losing so many life skills. It's ridiculous. People don't know how to, they're losing their means of painting pictures and things. They want to do it digitally. They don't write anymore, they type. So even the most basic skills we're losing. So I would suggest that people learn any life skills they can. I mean, people don't even know how to tie a knot half the time. They can't even tie their own shoelaces because we don't have shoelaces anymore. So it's getting pretty shocking, brother.
It is, but it's also very inspiring on so many levels as well. Like I just randomly you meet people through your daily activities, and I'm one of those people that just like to be matter of fact, dropping truth bombs with a smile on my face, and just sort of making sure that that energy is at the forefront of my interactions with people, both on the spiritual and the systemic level. And I'm very surprised sometimes at the response I get. There are a lot of people who really get not just this, the sort of the spiritual element. I mean, that's beautiful. We really need to be sharing that love and that authenticity with people, and really admiring people and respecting people for where they are in their journey. And there is a lot of that, regardless if it's through religion paradigms or even just a gratefulness paradigm, a scientific paradigm. It doesn't really matter as long as you're being genuine and really caring for people, including yourself. But yeah, I'm really surprised. For example, I was talking to a person I met just the other day, and we went through the entire unfolding of what's gone on over the last 100 years with the banksterisms and the way that the orchestration of wars and the rollout of further the rollout of the corporatocracy to degrees we've never seen. And it was an older generation man who just did not show that you wouldn't have guessed that he had that amount of knowledge. It was so inspiring to have that conversation. And I no doubt I believe that there's so many people who have these sort of deeper understandings, but the mechanisms to connect us aren't there to really show that where this energy is in terms of where we are at the tipping point. So, and I know that you've spent a lot of time, Max, trying to bring unity to the independent media and independent researchers and just the new consciousness that is emerging across our planet. Do you see that changing? Have we unified more? Have you got any new ideas for how we should help to facilitate that process?
Look, we are in some ways and we aren't in others, but, I'm seeing a lot of promise in the millennials and the new kids that are coming up. These are really bright kids, They're coming out of school. They're not being given any life skills. They've been led into this iPad world. But a lot of them are getting kind of sick of just texting each other, and they're sitting there, they're waiting for something. They're so eager to learn. And these are a huge bonus, really. I mean, you can show a lot of these kids these life skills. They want to learn life skills. It's just that no one's teaching them, and they're thinking that they have to go out and get involved in the corporate world, and their parents are pushing them out there to get jobs and all this sort of stuff and, excel in the academic world. But a lot of them, they just want to know how to grow a garden or dig a hole or fix a car or, do something normal. A lot of them want to know how to do that sort of stuff. So these kids are ripe for teaching all of these life skills. So something people could do, I would suggest, would be like get involved in some sort of youth action groups that aren't government funded or government controlled and teach some of these kids some real gardening skills and things, like start a parents group or whatever where you can have kids there and start a community garden, get the kids involved in that sort of stuff and teach them all these sorts of things. And the spiritual understandings come with just going and getting your hands dirty, getting your hands in the soil really helps. So these sorts of things are really good. I mean, a lot of the millennials are really bright. Like I said, a lot of these kids, they know there's something going on. They know the world's not right. But again, they get swept up in the texting roller coaster and all the stuff that their peers are up to as well. So that's kind of damaging. And of course, it's dopamine addiction, which is one of the big problems we've got with the youth is dopamine addiction. Because every time you click an iPad, a little icon on your phone, you get a little burst of dopamine. And that's happened to kids really early. So, getting them away from that and the younger generation is where our future is. And it's really important we pay attention to it because they're being led into this world, this digital world. Now it's changing so rapidly. This whole smart grid's coming along so rapidly. The kids that are starting school now will have no reference point for what freedom looked like once they come out of school. So it's really important that we get involved there, I think. That show, and it's showing a huge promise because a lot of these kids, like I said, they're very intelligent and they're looking for something to learn because the schools aren't teaching them anything and life isn't really teaching them anything. It's all becoming about, peer status and social status and who looks good and who doesn't and who's got the latest tech and who hasn't and who's got the latest exploding shoes or whatever and he said, she said, whatever, and they don't want it. They want to learn. And they're just not getting any real learning at school. So there's a lot of promise to be shown there, I think.
Do you think that as we move forward, because it really is so paradoxical at the moment. It's like, wow, we're at this fork in the road, and are we going to choose control or freedom? And it's almost a parody of life, of existence, to be in this moment. I think it's a brilliant, it's a genius moment to incarnate into, really, when you think about that dichotomy and the layers of dichotomies underneath it. But do you think as we move forward that we've got like a collective immune system that's just going to shake energetically and naturally shake and wake us into that avenue of freedom, or do you think it really comes down to the choices that we're all making? Well, I mean, I guess it's a bit of both, but the question is, do you think it's going to be natural for us to move towards the path that leads to freedom instead of being led down control?
Well, look, it's natural for us to want freedom, but a lot of people aren't noticing where they're being led is the problem. A lot of people are distracted by the tech, which is the problem with the tech. Like I said, it's a dopamine addiction, all the flashy icons and stuff. They're just not looking up from their phones. And it's the fact that we're being led into this because everything is revolving around the phone. Like I said here, if you want to check into a train in Denmark, you've got to use your phone to log on. A lot of people I see at airports are using their phone they don't even buy tickets anymore. They just use their phone and scan their phone, all that sort of stuff. So it's ruling people's lives in that way. And it's getting away from that and getting away from this convenience. So even though there's a spiritual awakening happening, there's this convenience that's happening underneath it, which is the problem. The convenience is the smart grid, and the convenience is the new world order, the new world where everything is orderly, where there are only two types of people, those who are desirable and those who are undesirable. You know, a lot of people aren't noticing it happening, which is why they're ramping all this stuff up. You know, that's why they're not noticing. That's why there's so much theatre of war and theatre of conflicts and left and right paradigm in politics and all sorts of stuff, Trump and China and Korea and everything. It's all rubbish. It's all just to keep us distracted while all this tech is rolled out. They only got about another 3 to 5 years they need to distract us, and it'll all be online. And the tech is coming online in all countries. It's coming online in Iran and China and Russia and America. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you think the bad guys are. The tech is being rolled out in all countries. So it's that convenience, is whether people can see that it's this convenience society that is leading them into this state. And unfortunately, it's the way the kids have been separated from their parents. There's a huge generation gap. So the kids aren't really listening to what their parents say. And even if they are, the kids that are coming out of school now, they might come out of school with these bright ideas, and within 5 or 10 years, they realize that the world's pretty well messed up. But by that time, it's the new kids coming out of school who won't listen to them, you know, and they'll be even more disconnected. So, you know, whatever's going to happen, it has to happen now. It has to happen within the next 3 to 5 years. It has to be this generation that does something about this. And we have to step away from this smart grid. We have to step away from this system because we're the ones that are holding it up. And like I said, it has to be us because we have a reference point for what freedom could be. Now, not for what it looked like, because we've never had freedom. We've never seen freedom. But we've got an idea of what it is. We've got an idea of what it looks like. And the kids that are coming out of school in 10 years won't have any idea what it looks like. You know, it's like they had in the book 1984, when they took all the words out of the language that related to rebellion or anything like that. It's almost like that, only they're taking all the concepts out of people's imagination that relate to freedom. So, you know, you can imagine what the world will be like in another 10 years if we allow it to go down the path that it's going. But I think it's reaching ahead. I mean, a lot of people aren't going to accept it. And even a lot of old people, a lot of people who like tech simply aren't going to accept it either. They're going to start questioning why this is happening, you know. And we just got to hope we get to a point of unempowered humanity against the other goon squad of stupidity, which is our police force, which is willing to enforce any legislation, no matter how corrupt it is. And we hope that we get to this tipping point before it gets too out of balance, you know. But it's anybody's guess. I mean, bringing this information to people in the right way and providing information to them that can empower them and help, you know, fix this and provide something that they can do to counteract this system that's coming online is a big help. We have to do that. It's just finding out what the right mechanism is and remembering how to present this information to people in an empowering way.
Yeah, communication has a big place in this process. So I see a lot of anger and hatred and people yelling and screaming at each other online, even those in the so-called Truth and Freedom Network. And that does nothing but build defense barriers, and nothing is learned, nothing is grown, and it's to no avail. So I certainly have recommended that myself in my writing journey, is to really try and do it compassionately, caringly, but very directly and even bluntly sometimes as well if you need to. But that's not to negate the exchange that you're having with that particular person, even if you don't know it. It should be respected. Moving back to some of your commentary about children and the next generation, absolutely. We've lost you talked about disconnection, and we have lost our connection to community, to tribe. We've lost our connection to self. It's not something that's taught, from an early age by many people. There are obviously some conscious parents out there who are doing a wonderful job, but many just let their children be indoctrinated by the education system, or the so-called education system. But we've lost our connection to elders and the initiation process. I had to go through an initiation process myself. There was no one there to do it for me. So I initiated myself into the world of truth and of freedom, and being this being, having this crazy experience. And I think that we should really encourage children to do that themselves as well, because we just don't have that societal infrastructure in place to help kids initiate into the world and become and move along, or at least step onto that journey of empowerment and enlightenment. But okay, let's get on to what's going on in the smart grid, into the Internet of Things, of 5G. You've talked a lot about it over the last several months. You talked just before about the legalese and sort of the way that the system is constructed. In the interview that I heard you with, I forget the guy's name from InPower, but he spoke about submitting affidavits to the governmental institutions to get them to agree that the smart grid and the smart meters are actually safe. And he hasn't been able to get them to sign that affidavit. I think that really is a strong sort of player in helping people to sort of become conscious of this process, because there is a thing such as electromagnetic pollution. There are people that are highly sensitive to it, and it causes them sickness and other dysfunction and conflict within their physiology, and potentially energy as well. Others, like myself, I don't really feel the effects on a conscious level at all. I feel, not like it's having a detrimental effect on me, but who knows what's happening subtly. And that, I guess that's why so many people aren't yet connected to the idea that Wi-Fi pollution and other electromagnetic pollution can actually be harmful to us. But there are studies, there are anecdotal evidence, there is so much potential for people to become conscious of what's going on in terms of the impact of this technology. So do you think that's an approach that needs to be given greater attention?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, what they're doing with the Empower movement is really good, because what we're basically doing, or what they're doing, is they've worked out, how the legal system works. I mean, it's all commerce, really. And all of these smart meters and this whole smart grid is being rolled out. And not only is it affecting our health, I mean, it's surveillance, it's invasion of privacy, all sorts of stuff. What they're basically doing by submitting in an affidavit form, they're basically laying out all the dangers of smart meters, and they're submitting it as an affidavit. And because once something is submitted into the legal system as an affidavit, then it becomes the truth according to law. It doesn't have to be the truth, but it becomes the truth according to law because it's been submitted as an affidavit, and it will stand as the truth until someone produces another affidavit that rebuts it. So basically, in order for them to continue, they have to prove that smart meters are safe. And they're not. They can't prove they're safe because they are. They haven't even done any tests on any of this stuff. The whole IoT, they've done no tests on any of it. If you look at Tim Wheeler's speech or Tom Wheeler's speech, he tells you they're not even waiting for the standards. So they're rolling the whole thing out anyway. I mean, the studies are already in that shows how much danger this causes and how much electromagnetic radiation it causes, the fact that it's millimeter waves, It's millimeter grade. It's a military grade technology. There's so many things wrong with this, and so by submitting this affidavit, you're basically saying, well, yeah, okay, it's consensual agreement. Yeah, okay, I'll agree to your smart meter if you can show me that it's safe, because I can show you that it isn't. And here's the reasons it isn't. If I'm wrong, please show me how. And they can't. So that's the thing. And they're also doing it because they're doing it in commerce. They're saying, well, here's what it is. And this is why it's unsafe. So unless you can show me it is safe, it's going to cost you like $100 an hour to have this thing on my home while you have it there, until you can show me it's safe. So, this is all you really have to do. And you submit this to the CEOs of the companies, and submit it to the politicians as well that are enacting the legislation. And you're basically making them liable for damages caused by this technology and by the rollout of this grid. Not only liable legally, but also, or lawfully, but liable financially as well for compensation for what they're doing. And it stands under law because it's an affidavit in commerce. So there's nothing they can really do about it. If they don't stand by that affidavit, then their whole legal system falls down. So, it's basically using that system against themselves. And it's also a great tool for waking people up to the fact that these things are doing a lot of damage. And it isn't just the electromagnetic pollution as well. I mean, it's the surveillance. They're passing a law here in Holland, I think, on January 1st, that they can surveil an entire city block, and all they need is one smart meter on that block, and all they need is to have one person of suspicion living in that city block, and they can turn on any smart device in that block and listen to everybody in the block. This is being passed to law in January 1st next year in Holland. So this is what they can do with this technology. So if there's one person on any city block in Sydney or Melbourne or whatever, think about it. If this is the way they can use this technology, you got one city block there, one suburban block. There's one house that's got a smart meter on it, and suddenly Joe Bloggs down the road, you can turn on his fridge, turn on his TV, turn on his smartphone, turn on his computer. Because the new fridges have got microphones in them as well. They busted someone from listening to them through their fridge in Sydney a few weeks ago. And I believe that Malcolm Turdfall's just passed a law saying that federal police have the right to be able to turn on any smart device for surveillance if they have suspect anybody of wrong behaviour or whatever. And this includes fridges and anything that is a smart device. They all have microphones in them. They're all transmitting a signal. So this is where the technology is going. This is mass surveillance. If people can just figure this out and understand the real significance of this, I mean, you're being put under surveillance in your own home. They can turn on your camera on your laptop. They can watch you through your TV monitor. It sounds like science fiction, but it's not. They can do it. They can watch you through your set-top boxes. They can listen to you through all the smart devices that you've got. They can track you everywhere you go. And once all the currency goes digital as well, then they will make you pay for every single aspect of your life. This is what smart meters are for. So you'll have to pay every time you flush your toilet, pay when you turn your light on, pay when you open your fridge, pay when you do this, pay when you do that. And it'll all be digital, it'll all be taken out. And either you've got those digital credits or you've got nothing. And it'll be the same thing. The smart grid, you'll need these digital credits and these digital keys to open your car, to open your house, to open anything. And like I said, in that type of society, there'll only be two types of people, desirables and undesirables. And either you comply or we turn off your chip, we turn off your code. And when we turn off your code, you cannot access anything, any aspect of your life. That's the way it's going. But underlying all of this is the fact that this is millimeter wave technology. It's military grade technology. Millimeter waves are what is used for microwave cannons. So it's basically an active denial grid as well. So they could microwave a whole city. They can aim and target these 5G waves as well. So they can aim it at someone walking down the street and disable them if they're a person of interest, in inverted commas, which may be because you're doing something as simple as carrying cash, which they don't like you carrying anymore, because they can see if you're carrying cash, they can see what you're carrying with the 5G grid with the millimeter waves. So it's quite a dangerous system that's coming online. And like I said, the fact that it's an active denial grid as well, this means that it's a very dangerous system, because say you go to war with another country, like Holland goes to war with France, and France decides to turn on Holland's microwave system and microwave Amsterdam. We can't have that happening. So you need to automate the defense. You need to automate the response to hacking, automate the response to virus control. So you need to basically give the system its own cyber lethal autonomy. And that's a very dangerous situation we're putting ourselves in as well. We're basically going to be handing over control of what is an active denial system to a computer grid and letting AI run the whole thing. So, it's a very, very shaky area. And it's all being done, again, through our fear and our lack of spirituality, our lack of belief in ourselves. Now, when you look at it, it's fear that's led us to this whole thing. The fact that we are so scared and we're so dependent on the economic model, our greed to get to the top of the pile, and our fear of everybody else, our fear of anyone stealing a cent from us or stealing $1 from us, which is what the government's doing. They want everyone to pay every cent of their taxes. It's this fear, 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 milk everybody of everything, and in fear of losing out on a cent, that even creates this type of a system. So, what's it all based in? It's based in our fear, in our greed, in our disbelief in ourselves and our others, our unwillingness to trust others, and we've created this. We are creating this autonomic system. And really, when you look at it, AI that's running it, even when people look at AI, they think of artificial intelligence, but really it's autonomic intelligence, and that's what we're creating. We're creating a fully autonomic internet. And when the internet becomes fully autonomic, we'll basically lose control of it, and it will control us. And that's going to be a pretty ugly situation, because at that point we won't have many life skills left. So what are we going to do? We'll become like the house cat for AI. Where's our place in our society going to be at that point? And that's kind of where we're heading, which is a pretty dangerous situation.
Yes, I think the process of amplifying individual and community sovereignty and being more self-reliant and also building those connections locally and also regionally is going to be a pretty strong sort of base for undermining that whole process. You moved into, you talked about the desirables and the undesirables, and I just wanted to make a quick comment on that. I've got this, I don't know, sort of romantic faith that that the desirables, they might be desirable at one point in history, in one moment, but I've got this romantic faith that those people will eventually come to some sort of consciousness about this stuff, and they will turn, not in en masse, but there'll be many, many more people who naturally turn into undesirables for the system. I want you to do a quick sort of overview of 5G. I know you've talked about it, you've mentioned certain aspects of it, but in a moment, I think that would be just good for those who aren't really familiar with what the 5G is. But before we do that, cryptocurrencies, Max, there's a very, very loud debate going on in the independent media about whether or not cryptos are a genuine creation by independent people who want to undermine central banking and centralized control. Others believe that it was created by those people, but it's now been co-opted. Other people believe it's an actual part of this control system from the very, very get-go, and they're trying to suck everybody in. What are your thoughts about cryptos? Obviously, the blockchain appears as a really amazing technology that can help decentralize all of our systems. But do you think that it's a part of this system, or do you think it's been created out from the outside of it?
Look, in the current system, the system that we've known, cryptocurrencies could work really well at decentralizing, the monetary control. It could work really well to free us from the current system that we've got. But the problem is that with the digital IoT that's coming online, all that system requires to function properly is some form of digital currency. It doesn't matter what form that takes. In that system, Bitcoin will work quite fine. It doesn't matter what sort of digital currency you use. So what you really have, even if Bitcoin was started out as something benevolent, then the system has simply redesigned itself to compensate for that. So it's created. In the old system, cryptocurrency will work fine, but the system has adapted to the cryptocurrency. So in that system, when it becomes digital, when you've got to pay for, it's a credit, when you open a turnstile, or a credit when you open your fridge, or a credit when you get in your car. It doesn't matter what form that credit takes, as long as it's digital. So, it's not going to matter whether it's centralized or not. I mean, the banksters that have brought us to this point, they don't really care if they lose control of the money system now. It doesn't matter. They already own everything. The money system was designed to do what it's done, to bring us to this point where it could all go digital, and it's about to do that. So it doesn't really matter what form it takes. Even if Bitcoin was created with the best of intentions, it still can be very, very, very easily adapted to the system, or the system can very, very easily adapt itself to Bitcoin.
All right, moving on to 5G. Where are they at with the rollout process? So what is it, just for people, a quick summary for what it is, the sort of the technology, you mentioned the millimeter waves, how it's going to be laid out, what a lot of people just think 3G, 4G, 5G, but as you said, military grade, it's got these active denial system.
Well, it's a whole next level. It's not just an extension of what we've got. It's the whole next level of communication, going out of these bandwidths that we've been using right up to millimeter wave bandwidths. And these are very, very heavy bandwidths that can do a lot of damage. They interrupt all cell growth. They affect, they'll penetrate your skin, like 90% of the waves penetrate your skin. They affect the cell structure of all life, all plant life, everything they come into contact with. And like I said, underneath it is an active denial grid, the fact that it can be used as an active denial system, which is like it's the same as any microwave cannon. They can basically put you in a situation where you feel like you're being microwaved through this technology. So this is what they use. You can go onto onto the DARPA website. So just go to Google and Google active denial systems. And this is all 5G. It's all related to 5G. There's so many aspects of this, and so many ways they can use this to control us. I mean, it's going to give us lightning fast downloads and faster internet and all that sort of stuff. But it's going to saturate the entire planet with this next level radiation. And that's just a very ugly thing. And like I said, they haven't done any tests. They haven't done any standards. They don't know what it's really going to do. The tests that they have done, that we've seen, that have come out, that have been kind of hushed up, and coming out of places like Russia and other places, they're just showing what an incredible amount of damage this does to human life. The problem with Western technology, especially in our country and in America, is that they don't see that you're getting any damage from microwaves until you actually start to cook. Once you start to cook, they think, oh, that's no good, that's bad for you. But anything below that level, I think, is okay. So, that's the standards that we got, Phil. It's not good at all. But, 5G is not just the next level, the next generation on from 4G, even though it's given the name 5G, which is, fifth generation. It's not just the next generation. It's a whole new ball game. It's a whole new type of communication. It's a whole new level of electromagnetic pollution. It's being rolled out now. They're rolling it out this year, 2018. They intend to roll it out big time, and they intend to have it fully online right around all the Western world by 2020. So we've got a very, very short window to turn this around. A lot of people are getting on board, though. I mean, in a way, it's good because it's a non-conspiratorial danger that we're all facing. And you can present it to people, and it's in their face, and you're not trying to tell them about 9/11 or something weird that they don't want to know about. Nothing conspiratorial. It's not any boogeyman or anything like that. It's not some hidden hand or some cloak and dagger thing. This is a real and present danger that is right in your face, which is being rolled out without any safety standards by your government. And here's the method you can use to stop it, by sending in these affidavits and saying unconditional, or we won't have unconditional acceptance, we want conditional acceptance. Here's the conditions, basically. And you're using their law against themselves, and they have to comply with it because it's commercial law, which is what runs all governments. All governments are basically corporations anyway, so they're all subject to corporate law, which is commerce. So this whole approach of these affidavits will work in any country that performs commerce, basically, and that's pretty well everywhere. So, it's an opportunity for us. With all the bad stuff that it is, it's still an opportunity for a huge spiritual awakening on this planet and a huge step into our power. And hopefully this is what will do it.
Well, that's one example of how working within the system can help facilitate the process that we're going through. That's why I like the many approaches theory, is that we are all in a particular position. And, if you want to run for local council and try and help wake up a few minds that way, go for it. I'm completely supportive of any approach we can to facilitate that expansion of consciousness around us, including through this, as just mentioned, it's a soft approach to helping people get involved with what that aspect of the system can potentially do to us. Like we know, for example, I remember reading at least a couple of years ago, I think now, that France had mandated that all schools must turn off their Wi-Fi when they're not using it. So they knew about electromagnetic pollution back then. I'm not sure if that is still current, but even back then, I mean, that's very, very much at the forefront of recognizing the dangers of these technologies. And I do agree that it is a mechanism to help get more of the masses on board to really look at where we're heading and the potential dangers that we face through that process. All right. So, is there anything else you want to mention around the 5G? I know you've done a show on the quantum computing aspect. I mean, it really does feel like we're going to this dystopian Skynet future if we don't fucking well do something, right? So, yeah, is there anything else that you might want to mention about that aspect of it?
No, look, you're pretty right. We are heading for a Skynet type future, and it's almost, looking at all this stuff, it's almost like telling people Skynet's going to come online, and they prepared all the movies so people don't want to hear that. But it's kind of like that. But it is coming online. We're heading for a pretty dystopian future. But again, it's an opportunity for us, Phil. I mean, people can see it in their face now, and we do have a mechanism we can use to deal with it. And even, lodging these affidavits and all this sort of stuff as well, it's not even really using their system. It's stepping above it because there's a hugely spiritual aspect to this as well. Even lodging these affidavits, it's simply a matter of you standing up to someone and asking a question. The government's coming along and saying, look, you have to walk between these lines. And you're basically saying, well, okay, I'll walk between them if you can guarantee I'm not going to be damaged by doing so. That's it. We're just kind of asking that question. It's not unconditional. Oh, yes, sir. No, sir. 3 bags full, sir. It's asking the question, why do I have to walk between these lines and are they going to hurt me? Basically, that's what it is. And look, they are going to hurt me. There's barbed wire and I'm going to scratch myself. You need to sign this form to show that you'll cover those scratches if they happen because you're the one making me walk between them and I don't want to do it. So it's that sort of an attitude. It's giving people that first step to empowerment and giving them the means they can use to do it. So it's a good thing, and people need to get involved in it.
What advice would you give to people who are just stepping into their spiritual component? What was your process about transforming into a more conscious being in that way? And what advice would you give to people who are just being initiated through that process?
Look, advice is a dangerous thing. I always have philosophies in life. No stake in the outcome. You're only here for a little while. And if you throw yourself to the wind, you can ride it. Step out of your comfort zone and just get out and experience the world and be all that you can be and realize that, you are living art. You are a living expression of art. You're an artistic thought, an artistic creation, a thought in the mind of your creator. And you're here to experience the art of being you. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever be a victim of life. Step into who you are and throw yourself to the wind and see if you can ride it because you'll find that you can.
Yeah, so I like that. The analogy I like to use is flowing, you're in the river and sometimes you can just kick back and relax and let it flow and just trust in the process of where you're going. Other times you might want to be a little bit more directive in where you swim as you're going with the flow. And then at other times, I think it's really important to go against that flow and create your own flow and move in a different direction as well. And that's just the balancing act of life, isn't it? Well, Max.
It is, brother.
Sorry?
It is, brother. It is.
Max, I really appreciate you spending the time to talk with me today. I know it'd be close to 11 o'clock at night in the Netherlands. It's been early for me. I'm not sure if my brain was working properly to even have this conversation. But yeah, look, I really do appreciate you spending the time at this late hour to have this discussion. And especially after your big day of your workshops as well.
That's all good, brother. Not a problem. Not a problem.
Yes, well, look, you talked about the fear aspect earlier. You talked about the shadow self and sort of not denying that aspect of reality. And really, it is about not about removing fear or removing the shadow self and just making it all rainbows and fairies and lollipops. It, it's about accepting that the um, the spectrum from light to dark, the emotional spectrum, the roller coaster, as you put it, it exists, and it's up to us to step in to really sort of embrace all aspects of ourselves and transform whatever needs to be transformed to facilitate your own healing and growth, and in effect facilitate the healing growth of the world around us. So I really do recommend people to look after themselves, to embrace all those aspects of themselves, and really try their best to find some sort of harmony and some internal harmony as you move forward into this crazy mess that we call being human at the start of the 21st century. So, Max, is there any other comments you'd like to make before we go?
No, I'm pretty good, brother. That about sums it up, I think.
Look, mate, again, much appreciated for your time. I can hear you getting a little bit tired with your voice, so I will let you go. For those who have just didn't tune in at the start, thecrowhouse.com, available on the online as well as through YouTube. Are there any other places that people should get to know your work, Max?
Oh, look, it's all pretty well on the Crow House, thecrowhouse.com. You'll find links to everything else there. They've got the YouTube channel, but it's all accessible from the Crow House.
Well, thanks again, Max. Till next time.
My pleasure, Phil. Thanks for asking me on, brother.